today's guest is Andy Collett, the former professional goalkeeper. Started off at Middlesbrough, also played for Bristol Rovers and Darlington. He made 235 league appearances in total and made his first team debut for Middlesbrough in 1992. So today's guest is Andy Collett. Welcome along, Andy.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me. Funny enough, I actually seen someone tweet this morning. It was 27 years I think this week. It's 27 years since I made my home debut for Middlesbrough, so yeah, it made me feel old. Yeah, seems like yesterday, to be honest.
Yeah, I just won't remember that. I mean, I turn 40 next year, well, a couple of weeks' time, so
yeah.
Just round about the time, round up 1990 was when I was just sort of getting into the football and that really, so...
Yeah, well, I wish I was 40. I'm 47 a few weeks back, but yeah, it flies past, it goes too quick, unfortunately.
I know. Yeah. So when you were younger then, what was your sort of earliest memories of football when you were growing up?
Well, I was born and brought up in Middlesbrough, so one of the dads of a mate of mine was starting a football team, probably age under 12, under 13, probably under 12, yeah. Just basically said, do you want to come along? Do you want to come along, do a bit of football? Went along, enjoyed it. I was an outfield player at the start, and the goalkeeper gets injured, get put in goal, or fancies going in goal. I went in goal, and I wasn't too bad, and I just sort of stuck with it, really. So, yeah, probably 12, 13-year-old.
Yeah, it seems to happen a lot. That I mean, I've spoken to a few ex-football players, and they say like they started off in a certain position, then the defenders got injured or something, so they went up front and whatnot. And then obviously they sort of kept that position then, really.
Well, with the goalkeepers, usually if you weren't very good outfield, you got shoved in goal.
Yeah.
So I probably wasn't very good outfield, and I went in goal, and at least in goal, I probably got to play every week, and I must have been all right, obviously, with them wanting to stick with me.
Yeah. Well, you've had a good career, so you must have been doing something right, mate.
Yeah, I did okay.
Yeah. So, like I say, so when you were growing up, then who was your this footballing hero then? When you were watching football as a youngster?
Probably Peter Shilton. Obviously, a guy Ray Clements, who's passed away unfortunately this week. And then when you get involved with Middlesbrough, you're lucky enough to go down and sort of be around some of the first team guys and watch them train, and then you get involved in being around them a little bit. And so probably my first one off TV would be Pete Shilton.
Yeah.
And then the first one that you went on to play or be around a lot more was Stephen Pears, who was just phenomenal goalkeeper, very underrated. And it's only when you lose him, as obviously when he left the club, and you see other guys as well come in, because the club sort of took off, and you had a few other goalkeepers come in, and he was just another level. And yet a new manager came in, and new managers wanted to bring their own goalkeepers in, so he ended up sort of being frozen out. But goalkeeping wise, he was just, he was another level. He was fantastic. Yeah,
I think for me personally as well, he was one of my favourites as well. I remember going to his testimonial as well at Ayresome Park. And he was a great keeper for us at the time. It was like, it took us a while, I think, to replace him, and then the same again a few years later with Schwarzer.
Yeah.
Sort of, it's always hard to replace keepers like that, really, isn't it?
Oh, 100%. I mean, like I said, goalkeepers, you probably don't realise how good they are until they've gone. And I think I'd moved on in my career, and I was living down Bristol, playing around that area, and you'd always, how's Schwarzer doing, or how's this one doing? And fans used to sort of grumble about him, because obviously I'm a Borough lad and I follow the Borough, and would have loved to have a long career there, but unfortunately it wasn't to be. But fans would sort of grumble about Schwarzer, and you'd be like, oh, he can't kick it, and he can't this, and he can't that. And, whenever I watched him, I thought he was outrageous, and everything. Yeah, his kicking wasn't as good as maybe the guy that was before him, but everything else that he brought to the game, and obviously you look at the career that he actually went on to have after Middlesbrough, and it took him You know, they obviously they had a few, Jason Steele, Ross Turnbull, Brad Jones, a few people like that really, but they were just not the same level. And yeah, in goalkeeping terms, now you've seen it even in the Premier League. You know, you've got to have a good goal. If you don't have a top goalkeeper, you won't win anything. And I think whenever Middlesbrough have had a real top keeper, they've probably tended to be, you know, doing well in the league. So yeah, very, very hard to replace the top keeper.
Yeah, I think the same with Man United, wasn't it, really? When after Schmeichel, they had so many keepers after he left, and they've struggled to replace him really until sort of they had De Gea.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, like I say, you know, you look at what, you know, Liverpool is the best example. You know, Liverpool were up there, and what was costing them was the goalkeeper.
Yeah.
So they went out and spent 50, 60 million on a goalkeeper who's pretty much made the difference between them, you know, coming second and winning. Man City, the same. Chelsea obviously have splashed out a lot on a goalkeeper who was a big gamble for me at 72 million for a 21-year-old. And it hasn't quite come off, so they've had to go and buy another one. But yeah, good goalkeepers are very, very difficult to come across. And when you've got one, you've got to try and make sure that you keep it.
Yeah, definitely. So looking back on your career then, when you were starting out at Middlesbrough, sort of, can you remember your first team debut, who it was against?
Yeah, of course, yeah. You know, you remember special moments like that. And as I said, you know, my home debut was against Norwich. So what we had 2 games left at the end of the season. We went to Sheffield Wednesday, and we were in the Premier League, the first year of the Premier League, and we needed to win to stay up or to have a chance of staying up. But other results could affect us. So we went to Sheffield Wednesday. Stephen Pearce failed the fitness test, and the manager just said, "You're going to play." Obviously, very nervous. 28,000 at Sheffield Wednesday. We won the game 3-2. Managed to play quite well, and then similar the next week, really, we actually got relegated due to results. And the following week, again, waiting for Pearsy, waiting for Ian Ironside. Both of them failed fitness tests. So I made my home debut against Norwich. Again, let 3 in. But actually, you know, managed to play quite well. So it was a funny day, really, because obviously you'd made your home debut, which was just, you know, what we all in the youth team wanted to do. But we got relegated, and obviously it was out of the Premier League, so it was bittersweet, really. But again, yeah, fantastic memory, and one of the things that you do look back on certain sort of points in your career that, yeah, I've ticked that box, and playing for my hometown club was one of them.
Yeah, definitely. It must have been a great day. So did you find out actually on the day of the game then that you were playing?
Yeah, the Sheffield Wednesday game, we just travelled, so we I think Pearsy he'd had some type of niggling injury. He was going to have a fitness test, so Pearsy, me, and Ben Roberts travelled down, and literally 1:30, Pearsy did a fitness test. Manager comes in, he's not fit. Colleague, you're going to play. Ben, you're on the bench. Just go do your best, son. And it was probably the best thing, really, because if you'd have had much time to think about it, the nerves would have kicked in. The following week was quite tough because obviously you're thinking, I'm probably going to make my home debut. I lived 300 yards from the ground in Meath Street, so I was, as I always did, was going to walk to the game. Yeah, that one, I was certainly more nervous for my home debut, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think, like, looking back for myself as well, like, games at Ayresome Park, that was always sort of a big buzz at the time, wasn't it? Sort of when we had I think it was the early 90s, walking down the road and you could hear the roar of the crowd, and it was just something you don't really experience at the Riverside now, isn't it, really?
Yeah, exactly. It's different. Well, funny enough, I mean, I when I was out of professional football coaching wise, I actually, and the club were in the Premier League, Middlesbrough, I bought a couple of season tickets, and I loved just walking to the game, the old environment of parking the car up, going down, you know, amongst fans, walking to the game, watching the warm up, and you know, it took me back because, as I said, I used to do that when I was a kid at Ayresome Park. I used to walk up the top of the road, Main Street, walk around, and you'd see all the crowds coming down sort of Ackland Road and down by the General Hospital. and the buzz would build up, and it's one of the, like I said, it's special, man, because if you weren't involved playing with the team, which generally none of us young lads were, you were there going to the game to do the jobs, to clean the changing rooms, to do the boots. So every home game we were at the game, and most of them I'd be walking down in amongst the fans. So obviously I was one of the fans.
Yeah, they're definitely good times, then, weren't they? Great
Yeah,
times.
they were, yeah, fantastic.
So, like, looking back from when you were younger, then, is there any particular games that you watched or attended that particular that maybe stand out that you can remember, whether it be a final or whatever?
To be honest, there's a couple, but it's more moments really. Because in the youth team, when you're in amongst, probably 20 young lads, all similar age, it was just absolutely fantastic. You're looking back, and they were the best days of career. So from our set of players, I still work with him now. Phil Stamp was coming through, Michael Oliver, Charlie Adjardis, Anthony Lee. Yeah. A load of lads that Ben Roberts, Andy Todd, Mickey Barron, lads that you sort of, you grew up together, and we would sit in the East Stand, so we would get tickets for the games, and we'd do our jobs, then go and sit in the East Stand. And there's a couple of games that I stick in my mind. I think one was, I can't remember what game it was, but I remember Persey got injured in the game, and it was his kicking foot that got injured. So instead of kicking the ball with his right foot, he started kicking it with his left. And I was just in the stand thinking, that is unbelievable. And he was that good. He could, because I think we didn't have a keeper on the bench. So that sticks out. And the other moment that really sticks out was the game when John Henry scored, and he picked it up on the edge of sort of the home 18-yard box, dribbled all the way up, and he scored. And obviously it's in history as one of the best goals ever at Ayresome Park. And we were sat in the stand watching it, and that was as he was going, the crowd was lifting, and we were all, standing up, go on, John, go on, John, go on, John, go on, John. And obviously he ended up putting it in. It was just, it was fantastic, great memories.
Yeah, that was against Millwall, wasn't it? I remember sort of watching the run he was going. Yeah. You kept thinking, is he going to go a bit further? You think he's just taken one touch too many. Then he just sort of gets in the box, and then as you say, he just slots it in. It was a great run. Yeah,
that's right. And to be fair, John was he was a character. John, he was brilliant with the young lads. He'd take the mick out of you, but he could be harsh on you at times, but he was brilliant. He'd give the lads free boots, he'd look after them, and he was lively around the building. And so when, like I said, when it was a player that the lads liked, it made it even more special, Because like I said, in that first team environment, there's a few lads that, looking back, weren't particularly great towards the young lads. And, when you go into the coaching career yourself and you get a bit older, you think, there was no need to be like that, because there was a few, but most, and they called him Happy. John was, he was absolutely brilliant with the young lads, so it was great that he'd scored to go like that.
Yeah, I've heard a few stories of him when he's at Middlesbrough and a few other clubs, things about his attitude and things like that, and obviously he was a bit of a joker, wasn't he?
I was outrageous. But funny enough, I remember one day he was sponsored by Nike, John. And around about that time, Andre Agassi was wearing all the super bright Nike tennis gear.
Yeah.
And I remember one morning he just come walking in, and he had the luminous yellow stuff. He had the trainers, the socks, the headband, the racket, everything. And he just walked in as though it was normal, as though like, morning lads. And honestly, the lads were obviously rolling around crying, laughing. But he had the full get-up on. But he would do all sorts. Yeah, he was a practical joker, but he was brilliant with the young kids, with us around the building, which was obviously, like I said, it was really important looking back when you're developing, as to how you treat other people. And I would say that John was he was really good. He's really encouraging, and it was great to learn from him, to be honest.
Yeah, he was a very good player as well, wasn't he? I mean, I remember his partnership with John Wilkinson and a few others. Just before the Riverside Revolution sort of kicked off, really.
Yeah, that's right. Well, he was, so there was him, Paul Wilkinson, and they were like the main men, really. And then, when Robbo came in, and I actually left before all the real big boys came in, but Brian Robson came into the club and the bar just lifted. You know, it was just like, you know, you have the guys that are the main men around the building, and then Brian Robson comes in, and I certainly hadn't seen anyone that was like him. And then he started bringing players of another level in, you know, your Nigel Pearson, your Neil Cox, players that were just, like I said, probably a higher grade player. And obviously then that moved on again once I'd left, you know, with your Ravanellis and your real big hitters and the Emersons, Juninho's. But yeah, he was around about that time. John was one of the main men, and yeah, he was obviously he was like nailed on, really 20 goal a season type player.
Yeah. So you still keep in touch with any of your ex-teammates from that sort of era then, from at Middlesbrough?
Well, yeah, I mean, if the teammates of mine, lads, yeah, you know, you shot them the occasional text. Obviously, Phil Stamp works with me down at Premier Player. Cav does a little bit with us down at Premier Player. You know, me and Cav used to go in the gym on an afternoon because Cav came up from Ireland, and he lived in Diggs over in Stockton, and because I was local, so we would go into the gym and just afternoon, hour after hour, just up in the gym, just pinging balls at each other, head tennis, all sorts of stuff. And yeah, and Cav obviously went on to have a fantastic career.
Yeah.
But yeah, just a few. You just shot them the odd tweet, things like that. But in football, what you tend to find is of all the footballers that you come across in all the teams, you might stay in contact with a handful, because you're almost like ships in the night. You might be with each other for a season. You might be in the team, not in the team. But yeah, I mean, people, like I said, yeah, probably the guy that I'm closest with, who I work with 5 nights a week, and obviously he's a very good friend, is Phil Stamp, who obviously was there all the way through, from a young kid all the way through to the Brian Robson revolution.
Yeah. Yeah, he was one of them. I think he was a bit of an unsung hero really at the time. I think Phil Stamp, he was sort of obviously a local lad, managed to get a few games in, even sort of when Juninho was here. Remember a certain goal I think he scored against Man City. Everyone was raving about that goal he scored there. It was a great goal, to be honest, like, but it was just a shame he didn't get more games really.
Yeah, I mean, he was probably, he'd probably say himself, he was probably a bit more of a squad player, but he struggled a little bit with injury later on. But I tell you what a player. I remember we were doing team shape with the first team, and he was playing for sort of the young lads against the first team, and he absolutely tore it up. I mean, it was like, wow, how good was Stampy there? And I think probably within 2 or 3 weeks, he was in and around the first team squad, and he stayed in and around the first team squad. The other one that was like that was Jamie Pollock. Yeah. Jamie came through in the youth team with us, and by the time he was 17, 18, he was playing in the first team, because he was just so far ahead of the rest of us. And he was, Jamie probably ended up turning into a little bit more of the time a hatchet man, a physical enforcer, your Vinnie Jones, Steve McMahon type. But I tell you what a player. He left foot, right foot, up and down, absolutely superb player. And again, obviously went on to have a very good career.
Yeah, I think those are the sort of players who the fans like to see. Really. I mean, obviously everyone likes to see flair and that sort of thing, but they like to see someone who's just going to get stuck in, give all for the shirt, and you just know that they're as passionate as what the fans are in the crowd sort of watching the games, really.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think up here in the northeast, if you have a bad game, that's acceptable. People know that, but if you don't try, then that's not acceptable. And lads, especially local lads as well, you feel the extra pressure. If you run around, try hard, do your best, the fans will love you for it. And someone like Jamie, obviously, he would do that every game. Stamping the same, 110% as every game, because the local lads, and not only do they want to win for themselves, they want to win for the local team. So when lads went into the team and did well, it was brilliant to watch.
Yeah, definitely. So when you sort of came to and did your Middlesbrough career, then how did that come about? And the move to Bristol, I think it was at the time, was it Bristol Rovers?
Yeah, I wasn't playing. I mean, Rob Wood came in. I'd got injured in the pre-season. I broke a finger. So I'd sort of slipped down the pecking order. So Ben Roberts then really sort of jumped ahead of me. Ben had a great pre-season. So Ben sort of jumped ahead of me. Then you had Robbo wanted to bring his own goalkeeper in, and he brought Alan Miller in. So Alan Miller jumped above Pearsey. So I sort of found myself in sort of fourth spot really, age 20, and I got the opportunity to go out on loan to Bristol Rovers. Played a few games there, absolutely loved it. And then unfortunately my loan spell came to an end. I came back to Middlesbrough, and I was just a training goalkeeper by then. That's what it felt like. You know, you'd gone from playing in front of, I think I played in front of 18,000 for Bristol against Birmingham, and then came back to Middlesbrough, and I was playing in the under-18s as a guest player and things, and I just knew I'm never going to play with Robbo. I'm not his cup of tea. I'm not his level, because I wasn't that level. You know, I'm a big believer you find your level, and I wasn't that level. So I got the opportunity again. Bristol Rovers came back in for me, paid 50 grand for me, and Robbo said, "You look, go get your career started and go and play some games," and wished me all the best, and off I went.
So did you have a chat with Robbo about your future then, or did you always just know that you weren't really sort of going to be his number one choice?
No, I mean, look, I knew I wasn't going to be his number one choice. He was bringing players in, replacing first team regulars.
Yeah.
Like I said, Stephen Pears was just outrageous how good he was, and he brought Alan Miller in. And Alan Miller, you know, no disrespect to Alan Miller, was average, but he was 6'3", 6'4". He was what Robbo fancied.
Yeah.
And so Pearsey was down the pecking order, never mind myself. So I just, got the opportunity to go. He called me in. We've had a bid for you. Go and play some games, son. And, you know, hopefully you'll have a good career. There was no ill feeling. As a manager, he was very, very good in terms of who he brought in. And obviously as a player, even at 36, you know, he's the best player I ever played with. So what he was like when he was 28, 29, you know, Man United captain. But when I saw him, he was I couldn't speak high enough about how good he was. So I knew the situation, and I went out to Bristol and I started playing, and I loved it.
Yeah, like you said, you went down there, you had 5 great years there. Who was the manager that actually brought you there then?
So the manager that brought me there was a guy called John Ward. John went on to have a good career in management, probably League One, League Two. And then Ian Holloway came in. And me and Ian Holloway just did not see eye to eye. Again, what you do is, I think, you learn good things. You learn how to treat players and how not to treat players. And when you go into the coaching, you understand. And, you know, what I've got to say about Ian Holloway was the way he treated players when he didn't want them was disgusting. You know, I've crossed paths with him once since, said a few things to him, because he used to just treat some of us terrible. You know, wouldn't be allowed on the training ground. We'd have to train with the kids. You'd be doing every presentation all over the place. He just, instead of just saying, "Look, you're not for me, I'm going to bring someone else in, get yourself away," which would have been fine, he just treated some of us terrible. And unfortunately, I was one of them. And you know, I had 5 years there. I played for 4 years, and I really enjoyed it. And then the last year, I didn't play at all, and he made my life as miserable as he possibly could. So, you know, looking back from that, I thought, whenever I go into coaching, I will never ever treat players like that, and I never have. You know, at the end of the day, we're all human beings, and players would rather you just be honest. And he wasn't, and you know, it's the way he treated people was not the way I felt that you should be treated, irrespective of whether you're playing in his team or not. So, but it was a brilliant place. Fans were great, club was great, and I really did enjoy my 4 years there when I played.
Yeah, I think, like you say there, with certain coaches, I mean, you can always tell if they're sort of cup of tea and that sort of thing, but it's always best, obviously, to know, really, isn't it? Even if you might say, I don't know, it may be harsh, but as long as they sort of tell you, "Look, you're not going to play, I've got this other player," or whatever, and then you just sort of move on and go elsewhere.
Yeah,
It's just
because
when you get froze out, isn't it? Really.
yeah, that was what it was. I think the thing is, one of the biggest things as well is with me was, I'm 6 foot. He decided that he wanted a 6'4" goalkeeper. So there was nothing that I could do about that. It didn't matter how well I trained, how hard I worked. There was nothing I could do. And if he'd have just got me in and just said, "Look, I want a 6'4" goalkeeper. You're not going to play. I'm going to bring one in. Get yourself out." Then I'd have tried to do that. And he actually did try and do that, but I was in the team at the time, and Norwich City came in for me, and I was actually playing well, and we were going for the playoffs. And he said, "Norwich City want to speak to you." So I spoke to the manager, Mike Walker, and Mike Walker was honest. He just said, "Look, you'd be coming down to sit on the bench." I think Norwich were in probably Championship then. He said, "But only for a month while I've got an injury." So I spoke to Ollie and I said, "Look, I'm playing in the team here. I'm enjoying it. I don't want to go." And then his attitude changed. And then he just said, "Well, if you don't go, I'll make your life a misery," type of thing.
Mm.
And I said, "Well, that's unfair. I need to play." And he said, "Look, I need to get you off the wage bill. I need this, that, and the other." And then he really, from then, but the move to Norwich was never permanent. It was only a month's loan. So I think I played the remainder of that season. Probably, I can't remember if we got in the playoffs. But the following season I never played. Yeah. So, but like I said, listen, the positives are I've took that into my coaching career. So I learned how not to be with players, and I think with Holloway, I mean, you see him on TV now. I see him on TV. I'll be honest, I think he's an idiot. But other people will say they loved him because he was their type of player. So the goalkeeper that followed me, that was 6'4", he would probably love him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it swings and roundabouts. But yeah, I just think you learn of the way to deal with people and just be honest. And sometimes that means not particularly nice. But if you're honest, then a player will say, "All right, well, I disagree with you, but I'll speak to my agent, or I know where I stand, and I'll try and get myself out of the club to go and play elsewhere."
Yeah, that's it. I mean, you don't always have to cause a fuss. You can just sort of say, "Look, I accept your decision. I mean, I don't agree with it." You move on. It's best for both parties, and then it's always best to do it amicably, I think, isn't it, really, instead of having sort of animosity and
100%. 100%. I mean, like Joe Hart is a great example, isn't he?
Yeah.
New manager comes in. There's no hoo-ha. The new manager just says, "I want to go in a different direction. I want a different type of goalkeeper." And that's it. And there's no, "Let me prove you wrong." It's just, this is what's happening. And this is why. So, try and get yourself a club sorted. And that was it. There's no grey areas. It's just, all right. I'm not, like I said, Joe Hart won't have agreed with it. But he'd have said, "Okay, I'll best get myself a club." And obviously that's what he tried to do. But at least the manager was honest. The manager didn't pick him apart in front of players, embarrass him, make him train at different times, make his life a nightmare. He was just honest with him right from the very start. And I do think that you need to be that with players.
Yeah, that's it. I think with Pep, because obviously he was wanting these ball-playing goalkeepers and things, wasn't he? And obviously that's what he's always done at Barcelona. So it was just best for him and Joe that sort of Joe moved on at the time, really.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So when you sort of eventually did leave Bristol Rovers, and you went straight to Darlington, was it?
Yeah. So again, another thing that you learn from Holloway, because of the way our sort of personal relationship went. What I found out afterwards was, I mean, I had actually, I'd done quite well at Bristol Rovers. I think I'd won Player of the Year 2 or 3 times in a row. The team had done okay. So when it came to leaving, I thought, I should be okay. I've had a decent 3 or 4 years. I would think I'll be able to find a club. And I found out later that whoever would, speak to the manager, he wasn't being particularly nice about me. Which probably killed a few options that I might have had. I ended up joining Darlington, which was lower than I wanted to go, but it was a chance to come back home and a chance to play again.
Yeah.
And to be fair, I came to Darlington and I did. I absolutely loved it. I got my zest for playing back again. I got my mojo, as you'd say. We had a really good group of players for that level, and yeah, I had a good 4 years at Darlington that I really, really enjoyed.
Yeah, was it Dave Hodgson who brought you to the club? I know he was manager while you were there.
Yeah. So Dave Hodgson brought me at the club, and funny enough, I mean the connections. So there was Barry Geldart. So Barry was the youth development officer at Middlesbrough, signed me as a kid at Middlesbrough.
Yeah.
And then Barry was working as a scout for David Hodgson. So he was aware of me. So he played a part in me coming in with Dave. And Dave was recruiting at the time. We just sort of had George Reynolds come into the club. Was investing a lot of money, bringing players in. And we brought in some great players for the level that we were at. And obviously, you know, we just missed out in a playoff final, but we had a fantastic group of players for that level.
Yeah, definitely. I think, Gabby Dini, he was one of there. He was a good striker, wasn't he? He used to score goals for fun at that level.
Yeah, I mean, Gabbers was again another one that had probably just not lost his way a little bit, but Gabbers was a superb player. I mean, again, we were just lucky to have him. You know, he'd had a couple of tough moves, I think, that hadn't gone quite well. Probably wanted to come back home to York area. Came to Darlington, and he was just, he was out by far our best player. And things with Gabbers as well. He was he could be poor for 89 minutes, and then he'd just ping a 25-yarder in the top corner. But you always knew he had that in him. And to go into a game with a player like that, then you always knew you had a chance. So even if you went 1-0 down, 2-0 down, you knew you might get back in it. And he was, for me, he was our star man. He was our star player.
Yeah, I think with players like that, they can go through a time where they might not be playing well. You might not see them in the game, and all of a sudden they could just pull a goal out of nowhere. That's what natural goal scorers doing it. Like, I think Bernie Slaven was a bit the same, really.
Yeah, definitely. You know what I mean? 25 goals a season. You know, you can't buy them. Or if you're buying them at any level, if you've got a 25 goal a season player in your team, in your division, you're going to be doing okay. And we had that in Marco Gabbiadini.